Okay, so we are about to hear from a social media expert, and today we are talking about storytelling. So we are very, very excited to be in the room with one of the champion storytellers, and we'll find out more. I'm going to just quickly introduce our topic with some talk about social media. My name is Mary Beth McCabe, and I am on the faculty at National University. I'm really happy to be here today to listen and to learn, as well as to ask some questions. So let's get started.
Hi, Mary Beth. It's great to be here today.
Yeah, hi, Anne. We're going to first talk a little bit about, well, first let me say this is Anne McColl with us, sketch artist Anne McColl. Hello there.
Hi, Mary Beth.
And we are going to hear a little bit about the mobile marketing and social media program at National University. So can you see this right now?
Yes.
Okay. So a little bit about the program is called Mobile Marketing and Social Media. And here's an example of some of our students. Each one of them has a story. You can see how they're really involved in the course. This is how we teach. The point that I want to make is that you can get your MBA and specialize in mobile marketing and social media. And according to US News and World Report, these skills are really important. This is a textbook that I wrote and published with 3 co-authors. We're now in our 4th version. It's only been out since August of 2016, and it's already in 30 countries. So this is one of the textbooks, and it's kept up to date. If you're interested in finding out more, I'll be happy to share that with you, called Mobile Marketing Essentials. And what do we teach? We teach about real-world examples with real business people. There's a total of 5 courses, and there's no prerequisites to get started, and you don't have to take a GMAT. So it's all online. It is accredited. It's a good program, and they can learn social media, all of the above. So really, we've created some of our own content like this, where you can learn about the job responsibilities. And this is kind of a nice animation that we like to kind of personalize the experience. I'm sure we're going to talk a little bit more with Anne in just a minute. So I'm going to get back to our live webinar here. And I'd like to properly introduce Anne McColl. And she is a sketch artist. She's a copywriter. She's a champion when it comes to marketing. She likes to tell stories, and she's really, really good at it. She believes in the power of pictures and words together. And I have a bio of hers. I'm happy to share more about that, but I really want to get into the live portion of this. So Anne, I'm going to ask you about storytelling and kind of start us out with what is storytelling and why social media for storytelling. Okay, can you kick us off here?
Yeah, storytelling is important because it's about making a connection with emotion. And our brains are wired for these emotions. And with so much of today's marketing, you just hear here's our products, here's our features, this is who it's for, and then that's it. And the level of how many marketing messages we receive a day has just quadzillioned over the last few years with social media. So storytelling is a way to take all of that and just weave it together in a continuous narrative through many touch points.
Well, I like the word quadrillions or quadrillions. I don't know how to spell that, but that was a really good starting point.
Well, just think, I mean, just in the last 2 years, and particularly because you're a marketer, how many more Facebook ads do you see? How many more Instagram ads do you see? You know, it's just they're literally saying in certain demographics, and I think half of it is of marketers marketing to marketers. There's literally not any, they're running out of inventory for Facebook ads, which not really, they're always going to find a new way, and there's always more of the networks that they can sell things to. So storytelling is a way to stand out.
Excellent, excellent. Well, we have a few people in the audience. We're going to take questions. I put in the chat here that if you want to type your question in, or if you want to raise your hand, we'll be happy to answer them. This is being recorded, so you can come back and listen again. So Anne, you and I have known each other now for several years. You have a story to tell. So can you kind of give us your story and tell a little bit about how you got to where you are now?
Sure. I started in advertising probably at the tail end of the 3 martini lunch period. When I started, there was, I was actually in the accounting department, and I was a billing clerk. And apparently on my first week on the job, I charged a client $10,000 instead of $1,000, and the client paid it. And God bless the marketing director, the accounting and billing vice president. This was at Phillips Ramsey back in the day here in San Diego, and they had just been purchased by McCann Erickson. So the boss he came down from McCann, LA down to here, but I never knew about this till like 2 years later. So I started off in billing, and then I saw, because I wanted a foot in the door, and that's how I got it. Then I saw the creative department and said, that's the place for me. So I had to put a portfolio together just to get the copywriting internship. But in those days, there were paid internships for the creative department, and I learned with truly some of the best. A couple of the campaigns that, I got to read the creative brief and got to try some ads, but it didn't even go to the client. But a couple of those went on to become, some campaigns that I went through the office went on to be like one-show winners. So I was surrounded by really good people and had really good people to learn from. And it took quite a few years. Finally, the creative departments got computers. Back in those days, as a copywriter, I'd be paired with a art director, and we'd have a campaign, and they'd just go send us off in a room, and we would think of campaigns and then present them. And it was always how to take that strategic basis and add creative elements. And then from there, just as technologies changed, things have become much more fluid. And now social media, people can do, businesses can do on their own what you used to have to go to a television studio for.
Wow, that's a really good story about, how your story has evolved, and really captures the vision of being in the billing department, and then how you moved to the creative department, and then how you teamed up with some other creative people and created these campaigns that were very successful. And yes, I do remember Phillips Ramsey.
Oh, yeah.
So these were the early days, the most well-known creative shop in San Diego County. It was a great place to learn at. And, getting that first full-time job was not easy. It probably took me about 3 years. This was right after, a recession, of course. It took me about 3 years. And in those days, you put everything in a portfolio, and you dropped it off, and they would look at it. And if they'd like you, they would call you back. Well, I had like 5 portfolios, and they were in LA, and you'd call up and make an appointment. So you go to Chiat Day, and you open the closet, and there were like 50 other black portfolios, so getting the job and getting seen was a lot harder then. And now with social media is much more intimate and personable. And now it's like I'm like Twitter buddies with some of these
retired creative directors that would have never talked to, I mean, never did I reach their heights. I would have never been able to, even get my foot in the door in some of these places. And now, okay, at least we can trade jokes on Twitter and, still continue to learn, but it's how things have evolved. So it's a marvelous time right now.
So the world is much flatter, I hear you saying, that it's accessible, that there's a lot more possibilities than there were before.
It is. There's also a lot less time to think, though, because coming up with something unique and that's strategic sometimes takes a while. And it just even coming up with the strategy of what makes us different, or what's the gist in this product or service or consultancy business that's different than someone else, or what's my true core strength. And to get to that takes a little bit of time, and you don't always have the time to do that. Budgets have moved faster, but on the other hand, you don't have to pay $500 an hour to put a voiceover to a slideshow. We can do that on our phones now. So yes. We have the tools, but and now what's happening is there's so much more marketing education for business owners because they can do so much better on their own if they know what to do.
Right. Good point. So we've been talking about copywriting and the evolution of the marketing agency and now how business owners can do it all themselves. So let's talk about storytelling. And why is storytelling the best way that you communicate with people, compared to like presenting facts and figures or testimonials? Why is storytelling so relevant today?
There is storytelling personalizes what's going on or what happened or what can my product do. And Joseph Stalin, dictator of the Soviet Union, said, "One death is a tragedy, a million is a statistic." So focusing on the one personalizes it. So in a slightly more upbeat way, this weekend I had the pleasure of attending TEDx San Diego, and one of the speakers' name was Brian Sokol, and he is a photographer, and he went to go photograph refugee camps. And he said, well, when I was doing my prep work, all the visuals of refugees look the same. You're expecting, down and out families, and they're near the border and they're carrying their suitcases or their rafts of people going across the Mediterranean. And he said, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to photograph one person and tell their story. Well, luckily he has photographed many people and has told many stories, but when you learn the intricacies of one person's story, it means more. And so as marketers and social media, you just have to adapt the story framework to where you're telling the story. So sometimes you have time for a really long story, and sometimes you have 140 characters. Now, Twitter weren't they talking about lengthening it? You have, at least as far as I know, right now, you still have 140 characters. So it's knowing how to take this story and how to adapt it to where the appropriate channels are for you or for what your capabilities are. But that's what your story is. It's a framework.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a framework.
That's a really good example.
You can tell many stories, because it might be you're telling different customer stories, or you're going back to the story of your company. So there's different levels of storytelling. But that's not to say that sometimes you just have to say, we're selling mattresses and we've got, two extra inches of foam. You still have to talk about your product, but there's a story behind it.
Yes. Well, today's Wall Street Journal had an article about General Motors and the chairman, Mary Barra, who has changed her story. And that was the lead. That was the lead of the article. So it really caught my attention because we are going to be talking about storytelling today. And then General Motors was the number one auto company for several years, and now they've been outstoried by Tesla. So now the story's coming back, and Mary Barra is now becoming a better storyteller than she was.
That's good. Yeah, it really, telling a story can, it really gives a lot of, it can really differentiate your product and make it a lot deeper and make people fall in love with it.
Yeah.
One of the, I work in a co-working space, and there's, it's a female focused co-working space. And one of the women here who has, client / friend / associate, her name is McColl, and she developed a type of a purse. It's really a handbag, and she calls it the sash bag. And she's strategic. She is a product designer, and she's designed other purses, but it's strategically designed to go across your like a sash, but there's pockets on the front and the back. And you'd think you'd have the biggest pocket on the hip, but you don't. It's so you can carry things lightly. And, it's had over its evolution, various handbag, various taglines called like the anti-handbag or the, fanny pack for the 21st century. And you could just say, oh yeah, this is a well-designed purse. But she's really taken it a step further, and she's told her story of, I was out at a playground with my kid, and I want to go down the slide, but what do I do with my handbag? Do I leave it here? Do I carry it with me awkwardly? I wanted to go hands-free. So she shares on her website, she shows the first promo, the first one she developed, and here I am out dancing the night, and right there I had two people wanted one. And then now as she's gone, it's evolved. It's not just a purse. It's about, I want you to live hands-free. Women are always walking around with this big handbag on their purse, and we're hunched over. I want you to walk proudly, and I want you to walk with purpose in what you're doing. And the purse should be the last thing you think about. And true enough, it's been wildly successful. And I've had the pleasure I've joined her Facebook group, and it is the most dynamic Facebook group I have ever been part of. And you think it's for a handbag, but now there's these, women being women, they're buying 7 or 8 of them, and they have named themselves Sashionistas. I'm seeing one of our viewers here is Liz Goodgold, and Liz, she's better at naming things than I am, and I'm going, oh my goodness, that's something Liz would come up with, and they've done it themselves, and it's a story, and Nicole invites them to send me a picture of where you are with your sash bag. And of course, here I am at the Eiffel Tower, and here I am here. And I've sent it. Here I am on the archery trail at Balboa Park with the bow and arrow drawn, and there's my sash bag. And they're wonderful stories. And I mean, a single shot, with permission, a single shot of one of these ladies with the bag is what can play out on social media. And then there's been more serious ones of, hi, I have multiple sclerosis, and I can't carry all this, but this still helps me be able to walk. It helps me manage when I'm using my arms to, move forward with my walker. So it's really grown. I mean, it's just all organically, it was so she could play with her kid, but now it's, she's invited people to share their stories, and they are.
Well, I'd love to join the Fashionita or whatever it's called.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's just as a business owner, it's just what you want.
Yeah. So let's bring it back to social media a little bit here. You say this is happening organically, and the brand is really taken off with people just like you and I who've adopted it. So what, if you're talking to a business owner right now, what social media channels are available to storytellers like you? And could you maybe rank them in order of which is the best to start with?
Mary Beth, that's an excellent question. And before we start about specifics, I think we have to go back to your story, and you have to take the time to know what it is. And then from there, you have to know who your customers are, or who your potential customers are. So right now, there's just a lot of buzz about Snapchat. And Snapchat, I think it's like 40% of people between the ages of 18 and 35 are on it. And it's, it's supposed to just, we've all sat on an airplane and watched a kid sit there for a half an hour just Snapchatting back and forth between face filters. But, so if you have a product that's the demographic, that might be in an appropriate place. But the other question to ask is, do you feel comfortable, or does that in a place, A, appropriate for you, and B, is that something what you want to do? Like but besides working with agencies and larger brands, I work with small business owners directly. And let's say you're a coach or you're a consultant. Do you feel comfortable yourself on Snapchat? Just because it's the hottest thing, do you feel comfortable being there? So you personally, do you feel more comfortable being on Instagram? Well, that's okay. You can be on Instagram. Do you want to use Instagram stories? Well, you could. It's too easy to get bogged down in, oh my God, now they're all saying I have to be on Snapchat. But it's like, no, if you don't, you can only do so many so well unless you have a full team. But even if you're a company and you have 2 or 3 people in your marketing department, it really takes a lot of effort to do social media. So I would say start on a platform or maybe 2.
Okay.
And it might be that LinkedIn is the place for you. And then on LinkedIn, you share appropriate posts about your business, and you try to, rather than just writing a blog post, can you bring in one of your customers and shine the light on them while also showing the benefit of what you have done for your client? And, then you maybe find the appropriate groups as well. And also, just beside telling your own story, comment and help share other people's.
Absolutely. So I like how you took that back to the basics of marketing and really said, get to know who your target audience is, get to know the type of message that they are receptive to, and also make sure that you feel comfortable with the platform before embarking on that. Just being where the hot ticket isn't necessarily going to be the best. So let's take that one step further and say, how do I know if storytelling is right for my brand?
There's probably at some point where a story is a better way for your company to go about communicating. So rather than just on the about page saying, I have this many years of experience, blah, blah, blah. What inspired you to start your company? Was there a change? Or a place where there's always a great place for a story is a testimonial or a case study, which is a story of transformation. You're taking them from A, where you met them, to B, where after working with you, they, what the result is. And if you can share in just saying, so-and-so had sales of, 100,000. And then after they worked with me and figured out a more efficient, a more efficient distribution system, I saved them 20% of their costs. Well, that's it. But let's go into details about what the challenges were for distribution. Why were they so inefficient? Was it because it was mom and dad's company and you had to encourage them to change? That welcome to the digital age? Or was it that your biggest competitor just went out. What were the stories? What was give us a little bit more of where you started for, and then where appropriate as room, tell us what your options were, what some of the challenges were, and then share the final result. And even that plays out it can be, you can devote a whole page to it, or a video to it, because if I'm going to do business with you and you have a case study of someone in my vertical, I'm going to read it. But then maybe on the homepage, you did go a little bit more on the facts and figures. Was this and this? Find out more, and then you tell them more. So again, there's different ways to scale that story. And if you're sharing that case study in social media in a place where you have a little more room, maybe on Twitter, you're using your 140 words to promo it, and then you're just sharing the link where someone can click to this more. Or you're doing a video that can go for Facebook and Instagram, and you're doing it as more of a slideshow with music, and you're taking 25 seconds to tell it, but you're not using audio because, maybe a lot of people aren't listening to audio, but 25 seconds gives you more time than 140 characters on Twitter. So there's ways to expand your story as to where it can play too.
Excellent. Some really good tips there. So this is because we're doing this live. I'd love to hear some questions from some of the people that are here in the room with us. If you have a question for Anne, now's a great time for you to ask. If you raise your hand or type it in the chat box, we will answer that for you. In the meantime, I want to ask, when does storytelling cross over into advertising? Is there a line that you've seen in the past where you get from just telling the story to the actual ad itself?
I think right now a lot of companies are using storytelling in their advertising, and just as social media has flattened out marketing efforts and departments and making people take the initiative to do their own, I think with the ability to the investment right now, a really, really great example is Patagonia, called The Stories We Wear. It starts off with a letter, and it's from this, Patagonia is an outdoor manufacturer on fishing and kayaking, mountain climbing, surfing, that sort of thing. So it's a letter from this guy in Mexico, and "Dear Patagonia, I bought these about 15 years ago. I thought you would want them back, just so you could see how I've worn them. And they used to be bright purple, and they completely faded, and the butt wore out. So he took material from a umbrella and redid it. I mean, it's the marketing department went, "Oh yeah," but the story took on a 25-minute video, they probably took about, and it's lovely. But then you could just take a picture of that, and that could be Instagram or Facebook. And then, of course, it's a wonderful, even this, they took the 5-minute video and they probably did 5 or 6 of these, and it's,
we're having
on YouTube. So
we're having a few connection issues here, so a little slow down in some of that. But I feel like getting my Patagonia sweater out and sending it out.
Exactly. It's well, let's just say the fading internet connection is just like all the touch points available to you. You hit them at different ways that's appropriate for the social media channel. So someone might not sit and watch the whole story, but they might see this, and then they might see this, and then they're intrigued, and they'll go to the site and read or watch something.
So Anne, I want to ask you, what are some of the best stories that you've been able to tell? Tell us a few good stories.
One of the ones recently, this is in this is in tandem with an agency here in town. So kind of I had the honor of and the pleasure of doing some copywriting, but someone else was involved with some of the strategy. But it was for a web protection platform. You know, hi, I'm a large enterprise company. I run I have an e-commerce platform, and I'm doing $2 million a month in business. I need to make sure everything stays secure. What do I do? Well, these guys have a platform for you if you're involved in web protection. And that's a pretty dry field. And the video on how it works really I had to watch about 10 times to understand what they did. But the real interesting thing was their story. These guys worked for Etsy. They were the security guys for Etsy. And they basically said their target market is other web security guys. And they say, hey, we've been there. We've dealt with like the other web security firms where it's like some sales guy who doesn't even know web security. They're talking directly to the other web security people and said, we know what it's like. We've been there. So we invented our own solution. And, that's their thing. And they're saying, I'm sure eventually they're going to have to get salesmen because they have already grown a lot in the year since I've worked with them. But because that they're not touting, we led by this percent, blah, 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 but they're leading with, hey, we know exactly how you feel, and here's the solution we've created. And then they go into very quickly a technical overview. And then if you want more, you do the, hi, we'll make it a sales appointment, or B, you can watch this video. But by leading with that, very personal, telling where they're from and their frustrations, I think they were, and knowing their target, it's proven a very, very effective sales strategy.
And so how long did it take you to come up with that? You said it took 10 times of watching the video, but you also mentioned earlier that we have to be really fast on our toes because we have to come up with these things quickly. So what kind of time frame did you have to get that story done?
Oh boy, I think about a week. But notice even right there, I had to watch it 10 times, but that's because I had to understand this very complex technical thing and then simplify it down to about, I think the video's about 30 seconds, or it can also be translated to about 6 slides in a PowerPoint. And I'm talking very, very graphic slides, meaning it's very simplified, both using text and image. So it took a lot of work to simplify, but now for a viewer, you're greeted with the warm, personal, we've been where you are, and then you have a very, 5 to 10 second technical overview, and then when you're ready to dive in, you can dive in. But that's what it took.
Okay.
Warm, personal, and then a really quick overview.
Great. Well, keeping it simple is something you've been doing very well. And I found this book that you wrote and gave to me, and it's called Words That I Love. Words I Love. And it's just so cute and very simple. And also another brilliant idea you had was a 1-page book, how to have a brilliant year. So those were some gems that I found. I'd love it if you would share with the audience here about your liquid sketching. And talk a little bit about being a sketch artist. So first of all, what's a sketch artist?
Sketchnote artist it's graphic recording, which in real time or almost real time, it's taking complex ideas and simplifying them. So just as I was talking about how with this one web platform, I had to watch the video 10 times to be able to simplify it. As a sketchnote artist, I might attend a conference, and as people are saying things, I pick out the most important points and I put visuals and words together quickly to communicate what these complex ideas are. Now, I have to say, usually by the time there's a speaker at a conference, they've already established this framework. So they've already done a lot of simplifying. But as a sketchnote artist on the iPad, even out of these 30, 40, 50-minute presentations, find the big, what are the biggest 4 or 5, 6 or 7 takeaways from that, and sketch that live. So I'm doing this almost in real time.
Can you show us some examples? Can you share your screen and then show us some examples?
Sure. Or do you even have that book that you just shared? The other one? Even right there has a very graphic inside. Oh, graphic always sounds like it's so X-rated. But
I can go to your webpage and then we can take a look there, okay, if you'd like.
Yeah, let's go to
okay, I'll do it.
Liquid Sketch Studio.
Okay, sounds good. So I'm going to share my screen with you.
But as
we go here.
Right now, as a sketchnote artist, I do this live, but this skill was developed. It's all part of skills I've developed working in advertising agencies. It's taking all this information and how do you establish that hierarchy to A, get someone's attention, B, entice them, and then get them to dig in further. So this is just kind of that. You can scroll up a little bit more, and there's just there's some samples right here, Mary Beth, if you go down below the fold, probably. Like right here, these are just from conferences that I've attended. These are each about an hour. So this is something that besides being a copywriter, I'm also paid to attend either conferences or innovation sessions, and just in the end product is this, where someone has a visual map of what happened.
I'm intrigued by this. You did one for me back in 2015 in a presentation I made for the American Marketing Association. And since then, I've seen you do several dozen of these. This sets you apart, and this is just, to me, so brilliant.
Well, thank you.
How does this help a marketer?
Well, for a marketer, A, it works just as a visual, but B, as a I do these on the iPad, and I know how to draw an iPhone really fast and graphs really fast. I have a library of icons that, I've just sat down and literally drawn them 50 times, so I know how to draw them quickly. But if you think of sketching, sketchnotes aren't about art. Sketching is about ideas. And the sketching process marketers can use. There's a designer. He was originally at YouTube, and his name is Jake Knapp, K-N-A-P-P. And he's, while at Google Ventures, designed something called a design sprint. And what it is, it's something that you can use when you need to make big decisions. And it's either for product development, very much websites or how an app's going to work, or you can use it for marketing. And I've worked with a couple agencies now who actually use this process. It's where you get your important stakeholders together, and people put up their ideas, and then you find themes in them. And you put them all on sticky notes, and you group the sticky notes together and find themes. And then you take colored dots, and everyone gets 3 votes. And maybe the marketing director or the CEO gets 4 votes or something. But in this process, it's very much the same thing. It's sketching. I'm trying to visualize my ideas. I work on, you work on sticky notes, or you work on whiteboards, and it's all very fluid, and you're not worrying that I don't know how to draw people. You're just drawing a stick figure, and we all know how to draw stick figures. So that's kind of the working side of what I do. The sketchnoting, the graphic recordings, you know, on the iPad and having it projected up is kind of the sexy side. And I have to say, it gets a lot of attention, but it also has a lot of use for product development, you know, figuring out what is my marketing plan. And it takes planning. These design sprints are 5 days long, but it's supposed to really, you know, can you actually develop an app in 5 days? And at least in that 5 days, they figure out the best way, they create a prototype in a day, and then they test it, all in 5 days. So sketching is really about getting ideas down quickly and helping to be able to visualize them rather than being stuck in a PowerPoint. Another graphic recorder in the business says the marker is mightier than the slide, meaning getting up together and working on a whiteboard is much more effective than going through a 50-page PowerPoint.
These are so impressive to me. I am just so enamored with what's going on here. And I was at TEDx San Diego. You can see this. You got shout out 3 times during the event. And each time I was just raving that you got this much publicity. So can you describe how this happened with TEDx?
I have been a TEDx supporter here in San Diego since the very first one, when there was only 100 people and you actually had to apply to go. And even then, the first 2 ones I blogged about. And then I think I have sketchnoted, just attending and sketchnoting on my own, maybe 3 or 4 times. And last year I actually was on their marketing team. So this year I just said, hey, I now do this also in big paper format and iPad. And I said, hey, if you want me to do paper, I would be delighted to. And then they said, oh no, why don't you do the iPad and we'll figure out a way to project them in between sessions. So it's literally just being out in town and just expanding services and offering, hey, I'm going to be here. Would you like to do this? Now, you know, TEDx was not everything about that event is volunteer. So I wasn't paid for this one. You know, I am paid for corporate clients to do this, but that's just, you know, volunteering in the past.
So how would you define liquid sketch? What's your definition of liquid sketch? You're a liquid sketch studio right here.
Yes, liquid sketch means that working quickly and fluid thinking, and also where contrasting things flow together. It's how creativity helps you define your business. It's words and pictures together, because a picture on itself is really, really helpful, but how do you change a picture? You just change the caption. So it's, what I do is at a very basic level, adding words and pictures, and the pictures help illustrate, or a lot of it's just circles and relationships. But if you can express that relationship between things quickly so people understand it at a glance, then they're able to make decisions about that. So another way this is used is you might be at, you know, you might have a board of directors who has to figure out strategic planning for the next 5 years. And we might, throughout the day, have 5 different viewpoints up on the walls. And again, they might take their blue stickers and it just helps promote conversation. So these projected ones are, you know, the outward things you can show. A lot of this work is what happens behind closed doors and lots of NDAs and that sort of thing. But it's just usually using the visual to jumpstart strategic thinking and communication to promote collaboration. And
well, this particular slide we're looking at right here on neuroscience is about the most complex idea that I could ever have imagined. You've narrowed it down to a couple of different areas. Can you talk us through this one? Okay.
Each of these TEDx things is only 8 minutes, and by the end of after hearing 12 of these, by the end of the day, your head is just spinning. What this process is, and you'll notice what I was talking about, how bringing two things together. Here is neuroscience, how the human brain works, and machine learning. And what we're trying to do now is, right now, machines are, it's all the algorithm. You know, it's people have coded something. If this happens, then this happens. If this happens, then this happens. And people, you know, our minds is a little bit more just random whateverness and taking something I saw yesterday and combining it with an idea today. So what we're trying to do is teach machines how to mimic human thinking. Now, of course, there's the possibility then the machines will decide that the humans aren't necessary anymore and just take over the world, you know, but that's what this slide is how can we encourage our machines to think and innovate on themselves.
Wow. What
some pretty heady stuff. It sounds like the Terminator. Isn't that what happened, where the machines just decided?
And I like how you took the picture of the speaker and merged that in there too.
Well, thank you. Because as I said, I'm a sketch note artist. I'm getting better at people, but just like that person you see with the gears, that's about where my people are. So, hey, if there's a nice photo of the speaker, I can use it. So I'm not against using what technology is available to me to do both of them.
Well, I am so impressed with this.
I like the mix of illustration with the photography. It's the mix that makes it really interesting.
So does anybody in this audience have a question about the liquid sketch, being a copywriter, and how Anne has just conformed that and changed that? Love to hear your questions. I wonder if you can kind of help us to become better at sketching. You know, I was a miserable artist. I can't do art at all from the very early days. What basic things can you tell a struggling artist that they should do? What are some tips?
I think, first of all, don't be preoccupied with art. Let's keep this focused on ideas. And if you can draw a stick figure to represent a person, and if you can draw arrows and squares, you can demonstrate relationships, and you can use this for business thinking. And there is the guy who pretty much who made sketchnoting a thing. His name is Mike Rohde, and he's, I think where it really started to make big waves was at South by Southwest, and there was a panel 2009 or 10, and it was Mike, and there's a woman named Sunny Brown, and a kind of just all around creative guy named Austin Kleon, and a couple people. And then Mike came out with a book, and it's called the Sketchnote Handbook. And this is just pretty much in this community, you know, this is how you get started. And he takes you through, you know, here's how to draw a person, or here's how to illustrate relationships. But illustrating relationships is as simple as saying pros and cons and drawing a list and then drawing arrows between the things. So, you know, you don't always have to add a visual. It's the, you know, getting the word down and the arrow, which is important. So it's called the Sketchnote Handbook. And that's really a great thing to use. And then the act of facilitating a meeting with a whiteboard, there's a group, these are the people they're based out of New York. They're called imagethink.net, and they have a book called Draw Your Big Idea, and the authors are the founders of ImageThink, Heather Williams and Nora Herting. And again, how to conduct a meeting and start using image thinking, or, you know, sketchnoting in your office. Apparently Facebook has, and a lot of tech companies have whiteboards on every wall every space they can. And granted, I'm sure a lot of it's just, what's the latest, the football pool for the weekend. I'm sure that's how a lot of the space is. But just encouraging you to get up and let's draw this out together.
So we do have a question from one of our audiences. Jane wants to know, how do you maintain the spacing and design when you don't know what kind of information or what's coming up?
You just, sometimes there's a big spot down at, I usually start in the corner and work down and work down and work down. And sometimes I have a big space, and then you just fill it up with a big quote. And it's just come with practice. And sometimes, some of them just aren't as, there's lots of space. And I've even had, I had one TEDx talk where I listened to it, and I just, again, it was one of these lofty subjects, and I literally had to go back afterwards and just draw a few quotes in afterwards. So sometimes, I'm adding stuff in, but it's just learning how the pacing goes, and it just comes with practice, and you just don't draw too big. I do this at church every Sunday for sermons. So, that's good weekly practice.
So there's many applications outside of just the business world.
There's a big movement in education, teaching sketchnoting to kids. And again, they're not all going to be pieces of art, but if you can teach your kids how to take notes on their history, as a sketchnoter, when you doodle, you're using two sides of your brains, and your retention rate goes up 39%. And I only know this because have sketchnoted that fact, and I now am very good at Trivial Pursuit because you know all these random facts.
And do your kids sketchnote?
My daughter totally sketchnotes. My son, my son's probably more on the sketching. My daughter is an artist, and my son just knows how to draw 10 people and label them and call them an army. But yes, and my husband is a science teacher, and he is always, that's his favorite way to teach, is go up to the whiteboard and illustrate as he's talking. So yeah, I guess it's kind of in the family in one way or another.
Wow, I love this. This has been one of my favorite topics. I just, I think so much, I just think that this is untapped, and it's still very new. I think that there's a real need for this, and you mentioned that it's in the education field, it's in the religious field, it's in the marketing field.
Yeah, it's almost a low-tech, again, with all this information, how can you make something almost instantly be interpreted and understood? You always are going to dive back in. You're not going to capture all the little details, but you can capture the big themes, and then where appropriate, add in the number. So it's coming back to our storytelling. It's what are the big themes you can capture. But the funny thing is a good presenter might start with a personal story, and I might not capture that in a sketch note because you're not always looking for the personal. So it's interesting how it all relates, because when you're talking one-on-one or as a presenter, you want to bring in the human, but then the takeaway is, like at TEDx, there was another guy talking about some other technical field, and he mentioned it was about how information's transferred, and he talked about how his son, one set of doctors says he would never be able to walk because he had cerebral palsy, and then another doctor said yes he can, and the speaker made the point of, my son can now walk because I figured out a way how information can be transferred easier. But all the sketch note says is, my son can walk. So it is interesting how things are different, but also relate to each other.
Wow. So you could have 10 different people sketchnoting a talk and have 10 different stories that were coming from that.
Yes and no. I recently had a wonderful experience. He's Nick Nevada, who's another graphic recorder here in town, and he is an artist and an illustrator. He does whiteboard videos. And we attended a Creative Mornings talk, and we sketched side by side, and we pretty much picked up the same themes. I was working on the iPad, and he was working in pen and paper, and like she mentioned how her dog's her best friend, and I just drew a little thing, and he had the full-on dog. But people sitting often, if you do this enough, you pick out the same themes. And I've also done this with, you know, working with social media teams at large conferences. At the National Retail Federation conference, they had 4 people there. 2 of them were just tweeting. But what was funny was when they said something, right away they would tweet something and I was sketching it. So if you do this, you know what those sound bites are. So
back to storytelling. How do you monetize storytelling and sketching and all of this? How do you monetize that for a business? Let's bring this back to where the rubber meets the road. How does the ROI come around from this?
The ROI comes from, you can use storytelling in all its forms through your sales funnel. So you're putting some of these stories out just to show what your business can provide, and that gets attention. And then people come, and when they're ready to make a purchase or they're doing research, they're ready to dive in deeper. And then you have fully expanded stories. And then even along, you know, if you're a consultant, well, then you even have in your proposal, you might have a sidebar of yet another testimonial or something. So it's just a way to humanize what your products and services are.
Okay, great. Well, thank you. So where can we find you, Anne? Tell us more about how we can find you and find out more about this subject.
On all social media, I'm at Anne McColl, ANNEMCCOLL. And then also, being the two-headed monster I am, you can find me at annemccall.com, and that has my writing, and then also a link to sketchnoting, and then also a site devoted exclusively to sketchnoting is liquidsketchstudio.com.
Okay, I'm typing these here. Liquid Sketch.
Studio.com.
Right. Okay. Mm-hmm. So for those who are just now hearing about, okay. So thank you so much for your time, and thank you for the audience participation. We're really glad to learn about sketchnoting and storytelling. Liquidsketchstudio.com is the website where you can find Anne McColl and learn more about this.
Thank you so much, Mary Beth. This has been a lot of fun.
Okay. Thank you very much. Take care.
Will do.